everybody, and welcome to this special double episode of Painters Motivating Painters Reviews. Apologies, the September episode never went up. I was sick, and then the way the Sundays fell, it was like the 19th was going to be the first date we could record it, and that didn't really make sense. So we've just rolled it in. So we have September and October here for you now today. So let's not waste any more time and get straight back to the start of September. Sean Smith submitted these two werewolf dudes. I think it was like the very start of September. So thanks for being so patient and
So
waiting for
long
us
wait.
to come
Yeah.
out with a review. Um, yeah, I quite like how you have different kind of fur tones on them rather than just all being one color. Like obviously there's two different ones, but I like that you have like a kind of a grayish brown color and then like a pop color for each of them. I think the skin tone looks quite nice. I think you've got a good like kind of run of it, especially on the shoulder muscles and someplace in the face. It's a little bit deep in places, but like it's a very craggy kind of monster, so I think you get away with it. And then the bases, I think, look well for like this kind of graveyard, creepy Halloween monster theme. So good work all around on all of that. Um, on stuff you might be able to improve on, the highlights on the yellow fur are a little bit oddly distributed because you've got like patches on the chest where it's like obviously meant to be like it has paler fur there, but then you got like patches up on the shoulders where it looks like that's the light highlighting it and on the arm and stuff. So I'd just be kind of careful of that. If you're going for like a pattern, just like make it very clear that it's like, fading down towards the chest, and then the you could have a little bit of highlighting on the fur on the like upper back, but you want it to be like along individual strands that are picking up the light, not like whole patches of it if you're trying to show that it's just like naturally highlighted by the light. Like you have kind of on the main that mohawk he has going in the middle of his head. Um the nails, like the fingernails, they look a little bit they're very black, which I think works, but I think they could have like just a very sharp highlight in like a brighter gray just to show that they're kind of reflective. I think some of them it looks grand, but some of them they just look a bit too black. Like it looks like they're wearing black nail varnish or whatever. You have some highlighting in parts, but just like an edge highlight basically, to show it's like a shiny material, which it would be. Um, and then oh yeah, on the bases I quite like them, but I'd be careful with the like very very bright greens and yellows that you're not drawing too much attention to the base. I think you kind of get away with it because it's such a small area. But if you had like a really big chunk of this, whatever it is, like that could be attracting more attention than the model if the model's mostly in neutral colors. In terms of the yellow and the red, I think they both work, but I think I prefer like I quite like the gray tone, and I think having the it'd be nice, cool to see one if you did it the yellow one, but the other way around. If that makes sense. If you did it like with gray brown fur and like yellow mane up the middle, see how that would look in terms of the attention. Because obviously it's a big line. I think the red, it's like very attention grabbing. It's maybe a little bit too much because of the way it's positioned, but it is pointing at its face, so that kind of helps a lot. And it looks cool anyway. I like the way you have those little purple shadows in there. So yeah, probably something that's easier to judge with the model in your hand as well, because you can look at it from different angles. But I think they both look cool. Like it's definitely a nice color scheme on both of them, and I think they're going to look really great in your games or on yourself, whatever you're using them for. Over you, Jim.
Yeah, they are really cool. I love the tonal variation that you've got. Fur is a great opportunity for that. I mean, a lot of the time the sculpt isn't very helpful. It's a very tricky thing to paint. It always has been. Probably always will be. But I think um, like your colours and stuff and where you've put them are all good. I like all that. The tones in the skin are very nice, particularly on the yellowy one. It's just not quite as smoothly rendered on this guy. I think that's why this one looks better to me is because the skin has got a smoother transition from light to dark on it. And it's also separated better. Like the edges of the grey and red one, like where skin meets fur, isn't quite as well defined. You've got some of the flesh going over onto the fur color, and then kind of vice versa a little bit. So if you can get in there and sharpen that up, that will really improve that, because it's really eye catching. It's better like around the feet, and then the color is better separated between the mane and the face, but it needs kind of like a really dark line. And then when you start looking at dark lines, you start realizing that it could use like an oil wash or something on it, or just normal acrylic washes, but oils would probably be better because they've got a longer working time, and then you can push them around and play with colors. If you've not played with oils before, don't be scared of them. They're really, really fun and quite easy. So yeah, just to pick out some of the structure in the fur, because the volumes of highlighting aren't as good in the fur as they are in the skin. So yeah, just separating those elements out, and then as Matt said, like individual highlights on the hairs as well to really push it. But no, really strong overall, and as Matt said, the basing is really really great as well. So yeah, well done. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to Tanner, who wants some feedback on the weathering on the boots and legs. So trying to make them look dusty. So we have some more Spartans from Halo, which look really awesome. 3D prints. So overall, I think you've done a very nice job of rendering these guys. Like, they do have quite bold, striking colours in the games, and you've come across with a much more sort of desaturated pastel palette for these, which I don't think is in any way wrong, because it kind of makes the visors on the helmets really stand out. Like, that is the boldest, brightest, the highest contrast. Like, everything is up, all the attention is up near the masks, which is a really strong um, thing to have for your models, getting that attention like right in the right place compositionally. It's a great move. However, in this instance, it's detracting a little bit from the dusty feet, because that's a very desaturated tone that you've got down there, and because the armor is, you know, not vibrant and not really bold, that effect is kind of getting lost a little bit. So you can see that it's there, but it's not like, oh yeah, those are dusty feet. There's just like a minor difference between uh, the colouring of the armor on the lower portion of the legs and the feet. And I think, especially on the green guy, it's probably gone up a little bit too high as well. It's like right up near his knees. And when you look at the ground that they're on, that doesn't look like a particularly dusty ground. Do you know what I mean? If that was like rubble, or even though like a sandy kind of environment, like dunes drifting up against it and stuff, then you could kind of sell that sort of weathering. But the weathering that you've got doesn't really tie in massively well to the base, so it's a bit of a tricky one. For weathering like that, you'd need to make something a little bit more obvious why the weathering on their bodies is the colour that it is. So there is a little bit of sand and stuff on the base, but I think if you wanted to sell it, probably the easiest thing to do is to add some dunes of sand in there, if that fits the narrative of what you're doing, just to help them read a little bit better why the color has gone the way that it has. But then just flicking over generally like to the armor, we've seen a few of these over the past few submissions, and I think these are definitely the best two that you've done. Like, you've taken into account like the little bits of battle damage around the edges. You've defined shapes a lot better. There's more variation now between like the blacks and the greys. It's very, very subtle, and I still think you could push the separation of it a little bit further. But they're definitely looking better than that they have done. And that's not to say that the others were bad at all, but these are definitely the best ones that we've seen you do. So thank you very much, Tanner. I'll pass you now over to Matt.
Yeah, I agree with Jim that like it's even just like the composition on these is really really good. Like the way every angle you've shot them from is like cinematic. Where there's like one where there's like the red guy's the main one where the green guy's the main one where they're back to back, and one where they're so yeah. It's a pretty tricky thing to do in like a diorama where you have characters facing different directions. It can often look a bit like confused. Whereas this looks like it could be the cover of a game, and there's like different versions of the game have like the different angles of the same shot. But yeah, I really love the base, but it's like a woodland mountain scene. So I think realistically their boots should be muddy, not like dusty. Does that make sense to you, Jim? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I was. Yeah,
yeah, like because it doesn't really like it. They look kind of like they're wading through debris, like if they were in like a ruined city and there's like cement dust. because it's very grey as well. But yeah, I think if you just had like some splash mud up on their boots, that'd be kind of more appropriate for the scene that you put them in, which is a really cool like autumnal scene. Um, but yeah, it looks quite like the mountains beside where I live, and if you go walking through there, you don't get dust on you, you'd get mud. So that would be my recommendation. Like I think it's fine weathering, but probably the reasons it's not gelling is that it's not. Uh, it's to do with how it works, interacts with the scene that they're standing in. If that makes sense. Like if you put them in a blown out building, they'd look spot on. Thanks so much for submitting. And I think we actually have you again for October, so stick around for that.
Mm.
Next up, another one from September, Stephen Banks trying to get good zombie skin and stepping up the NMM. Cool. So, what do I say about this? So, on the NMM, I think I started off. I think the staples around his chest look really, really effective. Like the way you've got those little highlights, like you it takes you a minute to realize it's not just like TMN because it's like doing that thing where the light actually plays around in the correct way. It looks great. Um, the boots also look quite good. Having that kind of blood splatter on there helps to like break it up, which makes it easier to sell, which was a good choice. And then I think the nail kind of sticking out of the tentacle thing on his back looks good, but it's a little bit confusing that it's like the exact same colors that are on the spikes, like the kind of like toothy claw spikes that are on the tentacle. Like you can do that, but like you really need to have your textures like really on point to be able to say like this is a gray piece of metal and this is a gray fang and they are different. Uh like I think the um nail itself looks really good, but then like probably it doesn't help that it's a photograph and it's like up against the gray teeth, which kind of make it blend in a kind of weird way. Um what else do I have to say? I think the plates on his arm aren't quite as good. They look kind of like more like an edge highlighting situation. They're tricky because they're flat panels. So you probably would the easiest way to do that because with a flat panel that's small, what's going to happen is it's either not going to reflect any light or it's like all going to reflect the light basically, depending on how it's angled. And then it's kind of weird because it's like filling over a dome in his arm. So yeah, if you made those instead like rusted out or covered in blood and only the edges were highlighted, I think that would sell better rather than trying to have them as like a reflective panel. Um, and then skin, I think looks very good. I think like the wound area sells well, but I think you could have a bit more variety just in general, like especially up in the face. You kind of got like shading, and it's the same amount of shading overall the whole figure, if that makes sense. Whereas a person's face has a lot more depth of color. Even if this is a zombie guy, so you can go for like greens and purples rather than like pinks and yellows in there and like around the lips go like really blue or whatever, just to have more variety there. And like the big dome of his head, obviously it's a big canvas, you could put like scars on it or a tattoo or something like that, just so you have more variety. So like certain areas of the skin will have more variety than the skin overall, if that makes any sense the way I explain that. And then the base, I assume, isn't finished because it just looks a bit weird the way it's so gray and it's like texture paste, but then you have like some pinkish portal or something coming up through it. So I definitely like just like put more load of washes, load of color, just to darken that down and make it a bit more. I assume you're going for like a roadway kind of look, which that's what I'd read this texture as, but it's like too gray. Like it looks like kind of concrete, but not tarmac, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that would be my last notes. I think it's a very, very nice looking piece, and I think you're doing well with all the different disparate elements that are in this figure, tying them together.
I thought it was a ice cream. He's dropped an ice cream, hasn't he?
I think you're right.
It's,
Yeah,
it,
I
it,
thought it was like some sort of portal, and there was like a
uh,
thing like emerging up out of it.
uh, he's having a very bad day down at Bournemouth
See,
Beach.
the
He was having a
question
super
about that
time
poor man.
with his nuclear ice cream, and now unfortunately
Yeah,
splat. I'm
and
not
that was
sure.
like the last thing he was thinking of. Oh no, I dropped my ice cream.
And then rip. Yeah. Um, very, very, very gruesome, gnarly piece. I like it. For the skin, I agree with everything Matt said. By the way, 100%. With the nail, I thought you could differentiate by adding some rust tones in it a little bit. It stands out better from the back, actually. Like the difference is more clear on the back because you've got higher contrast in the nail. So there's that, or just add some rusty tones to it. That'd be cool. The other thing with the tentacle, I thought maybe you could gloss varnish it to make it look all sloppy and slicky, and then you could do that glue trick as well, where you kind of use oohoo glue, and then just sort of daub that around while it's gone tacky, give it some like salivary, tendrily nastiness. That'd be cool. For the skin, I think you did a really good job. That definitely looks dead and zombie-ish. On the dude himself, like the main protagonist, shall we say. Could definitely push the highlights a little further though, even though it's sort of pallid and waxy, it still has like more of a sheen to it. This has been matted down really, really well. Apart from the shiny blood, obviously, but that's beautifully applied blood, so no fault there. So yeah, just a few more highlights because it's the same kind of run of color. So even if it was just like on the the tops of the shoulders, around the collarbone, head, face, even if it's just pushing the highlights there, that would be advantageous, I think. The jeans look awesome, like 9.5 out of 10 for those. They look really, really good. Super job there. With the dead guy in his hands, he's, I'm assuming, just been ripped in half because that blood is so fresh. But he's like already in advanced stages of decay. So, he's clearly dead by the state of his mortal form at the minute. So if it's like he's freshly dead, then you don't need to push those like sickly dead. Maybe he's been walking around with this guy for all day. But if that's the case, then the blood needs to look less fresh. So next time you're doing something like this, it's either he's freshly dead and then you just paint normal skin tones, and that's fine because he's not had a chance for that decomposition to kick in yet. Or if it is the latter and he has been long dead, then you just need to make the blood look less fresh, I would say. So just watch out for that one. But again, really well painted dead skin. He looks longer dead than this guy, so that's a nice differentiation. And like the same for the guy on the floor, he looks like he's been dead an awful lot longer than the blood would suggest. So yeah, same thing there. NMM I think looks really good, especially on the boots. As Matt said, with those plates, just a bit of smoothing, that's all good. But yeah, your NMM is selling definitely. Just maybe next time you're looking into it, like the next step would be to add like interference colors in secondary reflections as well. So that will be the next challenge to look at. And then I agree with Matt, the base just kind of looks like texture paste over a bit of cork and not really finished off. So yeah, a little bit more care on the base next time, man. But yeah, overall, really, really gruesome, gnarly stuff. So thank you very much. Moving up to Bilkins, so asking for feedback on the latest bus, overall opinions, strengths and missing opportunities. What do you think about the cigar smoke and what could be improved from painting contest perspective? Right, load both barrels because you said painting contest. Let's go. Very, very good. Like tonal variation in the piece overall. It's a very cold palette, so we're enjoying that. If he's in a cold light, if they're in a warm light, which is what the bright side of him is suggesting, then you need cool shadows, which is kind of what you've got. And then when we go over to the blue side, it's just like hectic mega blue. Like it's way too saturated, that blue, to sell as like a moonlight, and you can't really tell what materials things are. So and what color indeed his hair is, and the headband of the goggles as well. Can't really read what color his hair is because there's blue and there's purple and there's yellow and there's black in there, unless it's a really wacky hairstyle. But I think just to make it a bit more readable, like a bit more relatable, just keep these as more normal tones and keep that warm light coming from the side. It's just him in normal light, right? So you don't need all the other like wacky colours in it. Make it a little bit more easy to read. Because his hair on the top is kind of like blue and yellow, but then down on the sideburns it's more sort of purple. So it's a little bit hard to read. And then the leather, same sort of thing. It doesn't look like a particularly familiar tone of leather, and the metal on the buckle as well isn't reflecting any more highly than the leather or the hair, where in reality it would be much more reflective than both of those things. So just watch out for like selling different materials in this very stark light that you've painted. For the cigar smoke, I think probably less is more with something like this, because again, we are sort of aware of what it is. And then when you look at it from the blue side as well, it's not really interacting with the blue light as much as everything else is. So it just kind of stands out a little bit in that regard, and sort of not for the right reasons. So I would trim that right back if I were you. Scars don't create like a massive puff like that when they're just sat dormant in the mouth anyway. You see people checking that it's still actually lit because it's not constantly chuffing out great big plumes of smoke all the time. But I think your smoothness is pretty good. You could probably do a little bit more smoothing in the skin, but as he's sort of a tough, ragged man, then you get away with that sort of angular perception to it. But yeah, a little bit more smoothing, and then yeah, just for this blue side, I'd like desaturate that hugely, and also push the shadow contrast as well. It's very blue compared to the other side, but it's probably not an awful lot darker. So I'd push the shadow contrast up an awful lot on that side as well. So, but that's been pretty hopefully constructively criticizing you because on the whole there's great skills shown here. There is definitely excellent light placement and shadow placement, awesome skill with the brush. I love what you've done with the goggles as well, how they're different colors depending on the light that they're reflecting, and the inverted highlight trick as well. That's quite cool. So yeah, an awful lot going right for that, and I hope you find that helpful. Over to you, Matt.
Yeah, very cool piece. Really love those goggles. Like they look amazing. The way you've got the metal and the kind of lenses both look super, super like realistic. But it's also the whole piece has this cool like heightened realism, kind of like comic booky, slightly kind of feel. With it, so like yeah, I think it's really nice. Scar Smoke, I really like it, but I think Jim might be right that like you could basically get away with having less of it, and then it wouldn't like you wouldn't have to worry so much about it like obscuring anything or whatever. I'd say maybe Photoshop it out and then decide whether you want to cut it off or not. Definitely on the blue side, it looks a little bit off, and you probably can't paint it blue on one side because it'll like seep through and it'll be blue on the other side. So yeah, I'd check that out. Agree with Jim about the hair. Like, is his hair black or is his hair white? Like, I can't actually tell. Like, if it could be that he has white hair and there's this blue light making it look blue, or he could have black hair and yeah, I actually don't know. Especially this big strand he has, like, kind of over his right eye. That doesn't really have a huge amount of like dimension to it. It's just like a white tube kind of going across his head. Um, and if it's meant to be like he has salt and pepper, like some of his hair is black and some of it's white, you want to have them beside each other, and then have like actual. You could do a little bit more texturing, maybe. I don't know how big this bust is, but just along the length of that strand of hair, like he doesn't have hairs that are that thick. That's like a big piece of hair he has greased back or whatever. Eyes look super good as well. The way you have that little glint in the dark side, showing through, and it's almost like there's a reflection of the cigar nearly showing up there. And the eyebrows and the facial hair look really good as well. Um, yeah, on the blue part, I actually had the exact same problem with the bust I was painting like this week, and the best advice I've had, which was regurgitate because it's not my advice. Um, basically, when you have two opposing lights, just well, you don't want to have two opposing lights. Yeah. You have to have if you have like warm light, cold light, it'll look great from the front, which it does, and I think it looks really good from the warm side as well. But on the cold side, there has to be a secondary source of light as well, because in any situation, there's always a secondary source of light. Otherwise, like the shadows would just go straight to black. So on your warm side, there's some other fill light that's like filling in the shadows that isn't completely directional. So on your dark side, you need to have the same thing. Like it could be like literally the natural light is like bouncing back and like on the back of his head it's like illuminating that and just shrink the area that's blue like Jim said it's just too much blue, it's almost like it's wrapping around him like this blue like ring light all around. So if you had it like it goes to like here in the blue and then it fades to black and then you could have like a rim light in just normal colors, that would really help like just make that side of the face look um a bit better. Because you have to kind of think about it again for competition, especially like you have three angles that you want to show this from, and it has to look really interesting from all three angles. So you have like multiple light sources in the front. You have multiple subtle light sources in the warm side because you have shadow colors. But on the blue side, it's basically all just blue, which isn't. Apart from you have a bit around his chest, and you can cheat as well. Like you can have light sources that are like really narrow, like maybe there's a door up in the side of him or whatever. So it's just really cool. Like figure out a way of getting an extra light source in that blue side and do like a rim light like on his ear and on like I don't know the back of the hairband and some of his hair and his shoulder and that kind of thing. Yeah, because like especially well, it can't really be lit like along here and also along here by the blue. That would be kind of weird when you think about it. But yeah, great looking piece. Thanks, man, for submitting. Best luck in the competition. Let us know how you get on. And we have Stephen Beckett making a little mini diorama basically on a base out of some leftover parts, which is really cool. I wouldn't have picked up on that at all. Reasonably happy with the demon, but the barbarian didn't really pop. Um, yeah, I mean, you can't really rely on contrast paints to do all the work for you. Um, if you find like, obviously you do under shading, it's the thing like slap chop, the cool kids call it, or did like 2 years ago.
Still do.
So yeah, you can do underpainting on it. So like have a lighter color and then a darker color for like underneath and on top of parts. And then if you don't, the contrast is like a filter over that, and it'll tend to even everything out. So it'll make your darks lighter and your lights darker. Well, basically pushes everything to blue, like the color of the contrast paint. So if you're not happy with that, then you just reapply your highlights and your shadows, and you go over it in the contrast paint again. Um, Having said that, it's going to be very hard for this Dragonborn dude to stand out, given that he's like really small compared to the demon, and he's mostly in neutral colors. So like the surface area of blue, like he had a good idea going like blue against red should stand out. But like there's so much red compared to how much blue there is, it's going to draw way more attention, and it's just bigger. And generally, when you do cold and hot contrast, the the red stands out more than blue. Like basically the way it works is cold colors like your brain thinks of them as receding into the distance and bright colors as sticking out. So if you reverse this and you had like a snow demon that's blue and your barbarian is in red, he'd automatically stick out more, if that makes sense. But failing that, you can very much like cut down the vibrancy of the red on your demon. Like you could put in some like red brown, some black in the shadows and all that kind of stuff, and that would make your hero kind of stand out a little bit more. I don't think he's like completely centered on the base as well, which I don't know. It's a good composition, but it again there's like a negative space between them, which makes it look like they're both equally important. If if the demon is just meant to be a piece of like set dressing, you know, you could make him a lot darker. You could like use less of him, like just have like just his head or whatever, and that would make your life a lot easier. I think. Um, but yeah, really cool use of like these extra pieces that you had around, and generally a well painted like mini diorama. So good work. Thanks, man, for popping it in for us.
Yeah, totally agree, man. Those contrasts are a tool, not a magic wand. Then and especially for something that's so big, like they're designed for small things, right? With lots of detail. The paint gathers in the recesses, goes dark, and it pulls away from high peaks and edges to leave them lighter. So it doesn't know what the shape of the model is. It'll just behave in that way. So you can use them. They're still a great tool, but you'll have to play with their dilution, and you'll still need to add more techniques on top of that, which obviously you have done here. But just don't expect them to just fix everything because it says contrast or speed paint or whatever. Because unless it's a very, very small miniature and it needs to be one color, or it's a section of a mini that just needs to be one color, and you will definitely have to add more to it, 100%. So yeah, agree completely with what Matt said. You know, it is a challenge making the barbarian stand out, and the photos are kind of blurry as well, and they've got quite a high sort of sheen on it as well. So when you're taking pictures, like try use a less direct light next time, and bring the mini more in focus as well, which sometimes means moving your phone further away, taking the picture, and then cropping the photo to make them bigger. That will give you much better focus usually. And also matte things down as well, because at the minute you've got a lot of light bouncing out of your shadows from the harsh light. So matte and minis down also really helps with that. Um, but yeah, overall, I think you've got some good colors going on in the red. You could maybe smooth out the darkness at the end of the flames a little bit more. There is some darkness there, but it's quite minimal. So I think just a dark dry brush over the tips of some of the flames would really help. And then maybe just pushing the horns a little bit as well. They just kind of look like it was, you know, literally just contrast paint over a base color. So play around, make the tip of the horn darker, or make the stem of the horn a little bit darker. Just a little bit more variation, just to make it a little bit more interesting. But yeah, great kit bash of loads of bits and bobs. So yeah, nice one. Thank you very much. Okay, Tanner's next with his headless horseman, very on theme for this time of the year. Very nice. Just looking for general thoughts. Spray, primed black, and then white. And then when it was still a bit damp, hit the raised areas with the dry brush. So it's like the classic zenithal kind of painting setup for a good paint job, which is nice to see. And I think a lot of that has been what's the word? Maintained. So you do have brighter elements on the top than underneath. So you've kept that contrast there, which means your paint's going on nice and thin and smooth. So that's all good. Like the I can't remember, is it cravat or something? This neck adornment that they wear, is it cravat?
Yeah, or rough maybe.
Rough, yeah. So I think that's come out really nice and smooth, and same with the trousers as well. The highlight is quite sort of broad on the trouser. You could have a little bit, depending on what the material is, you could maybe sell it as, you know, either it is super matte like now, but if you were trying to sell that as something a little bit more shiny, then you could have sort of, you know, a very thin highlight going down the center of the thigh, perhaps. Some of the oh, excuse me, some of the ruffles in the coat are you could push more. I think you could have more of a highlight on them. So on the back, particularly, is a good example of this. It's kind of the lighting of the photo is kind of doing a lot of the work for you, but it looks like you could push a little bit more contrast into the coat. Then for his head, like, I don't know if it was just me, but there's this really dark stripe, like right down the middle, and it's kind of throwing it, to be honest. If that's, I can't tell if that's like a dip in the shape and it's just the light of the photo that's doing that, or whether you've painted that dark stripe. But if that is fixable, like, I'd try and bring a bit more balance to like the overall tone of the orange head there, and then your yellow glow is going to stand out a little bit better as well, I think. The metallic trims are quite good, just a little bit of tidiness here and there where it's leached over onto the purple coat, so just tidying that up would be nice. You could probably push a little bit more shadows in the gold as well, to be honest. I think it goes up high enough in most places, but just, you don't have to push a shadow absolutely everywhere, but just some places where it really clearly would be very shaded is enough to sell the effect with metals. And then I like the minimal but also totally on point basing as well, like the autumnal colors, you know, really nice. So yeah, I think everything I had for this one. Mate, so I'll pass you over to what's his name over there? Matt. Of course it is.
Hey,
sorry,
that guy. Yeah.
Told you I was tired.
Never heard of him. Yeah, no, it's really nice. I really like the way you've got this very kind of desaturated autumn night kind of palette feel to it. Like everything's kind of cold. None of the colors are too like poppy or anything, but everything still reads. So it's like really doing that, like, you know, Hollywood, it's nighttime, but everything's still well lit and you still see everything job. So I think you've done a really good job of that. I do kind of feel like maybe the gold, though, as Jim said, should have, you know, some more shadows and saturation, like a warm brown down in like the lower edges, just because it's like reflective, so that kind of makes sense for it. But like that kind of washed out look really helps sell the atmosphere as well. So I'm kind of like in two minds of that. The leaves on the base are cool, but I think they could have more. Like I think you should shade them again now that they're on the base, because like they kind of like look like they don't look like they were painted separately and then like dribbled on. Whereas like obviously leaves are going to be like all like wet and muddy and all that kind of crap. So just even if you got some more washes and blended it in a little bit more, I think that would help it sell more as being leaves that are in the scene as opposed to being scattered leaves that you dropped on there. And then yeah, I agree with Jim. There's something about I think that like the way you've done the like kind of volumes of the pumpkin, where it's got that kind of like stripy form on the back of the head looks really good on the back, but on the front it looks a bit weird. And like you got like this very bright lines going in beside the eye, making like a tangent with the eye, which isn't great because it like confuses the viewer. And then you got this dark bit here, and then the nose isn't really glowing. Um, I'd say if you're gonna do the glowing eyes, like really make them glow like to hell. Like again, you're saying this is like a nighttime scene, so like get some like fluorescent orange in there and like white in the middle, and then like really make the front of the face darker so they stand out loads. Or like just do like a yellow outline and then maybe like make it darker inside, so it's just more like it's a pumpkin that isn't glowing from the inside. It's a little bit kind of between two stools at the moment. Like, is it glowing or is it just kind of pumpkiny colored? Does that make sense? Um, and I think either would work. And it would take like a couple of minutes, just either shade it down the inside or pop out the brightness of it. But yeah, really, really cool looking piece and very, very appropriate for the time of the year. So thanks a million for submitting. Hopefully we were able to give you some constructive feedback there. All right, Zach Harris wants to take this orc guy to competition. I think it's from Creature Caster. It's like a Forged Lord or something. Prune the skin, trying to get equivalent flames, heated battles. Yeah, so that's like essentially the whole piece. Like skin, flames, and then just metals. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff going on with this. Um, I think the skin looks quite good. I love the way you have the orange skin with the blue tattoos. I think you have like a work in progress picture or an extra picture there at the end, which I think it looks a bit better. But I think that's partially the photograph. I think you've pumped up the orange and the blue. You have like more contrast in the skin, which looks better. But I'm gonna look at the original photos just because they're from more angles and it's a bit easier to kind of tell what's going on. And that's what I wrote my notes on. So
Ah,
yeah, tattoos are a good idea. I think the smokestack on the like top, like the smaller smokestack, one that doesn't have smoke coming out of it, looks really, really good. Like looks like it's like glowing from the inside. I'm not 100% sure about the thing beside it. It looks like it's like a really heated piece of metal, but you're like, why is that so hot exactly? When there's literal flames billowing out of other parts, I'd like tone that back a lot. That little rod that you have sticking up kind of over his left shoulder. Um, the hazard stripes look really super good. I love the weathering on them, but I'd be careful with doing yellow as like one of your main colors and then having like this yellow orange kind of glow thing going on, because on the big engine part where you have the hazard stripes and then the smoke coming out, it's a little bit like the yellow is brighter than the orange glow because yellow is just a naturally bright color, and you have these like dots of yellow there. I think you'd be better off replacing them with something else, like a rusty brown or something like that, just so that you can reserve like the hottest thing should be the inside of the fire because it's literally emitting light, so it has to be brighter than the other stuff. If you're unless he's in a really bright lighting, in which case you can't see the flames, so you kind of have to do it that way. Um, the sorry, yeah, I think generally as well, like where you have the flames like billowing out, you want to reduce the heated metal effect a little bit because the heated metal should be way less bright than the flames. Yeah, so like just go up to like orange as the highlight, like make the midtown of the flames like the highlight of the heated metal, if that makes sense. And then I wasn't 100% sure what's going on with his knuckles, or like not his knuckles, actually his fingers. Like I'm not sure, they're like red, and it's meant to be like iron rust, or is it blood, or are they heated up, or what exactly is going on? Like I think it looks kind of cool, but it's a little bit confusing because you don't have anything like that effect anywhere else, and it doesn't look like either make it be heated metal, like he's got a big glowy fist, or just make it like more like the regular steel, if that makes sense. And yeah, and you've kind of maintained. Maybe it looks a little bit better in that later photo, but like if he, it looks like it's kind of painted red, but you could probably have more bits painted red if that's like part of his color scheme, or just forget about it because like that's not really what you're going for. Does that make sense? Um, yeah, I was gonna say push the max highlight on them. You've done that on the skin. You've done that a little bit on the next your more finished piece, but I'd say still push it up more. Like literally have it go to near white, just in the odd place, because skin. He's got a lot of big exposed muscles, and he looks like he's a sweaty guy. So I'd say you should still have like kind of like sharp highlights there to show that it's glistening in the heat of the forge. Great work. Hope you get on well with whatever the competition is. I'm sure Jim has something to add on top of me.
Oh, not too much. I agree with all those points. My thought was for the well, there's two trains of thought for this. Either he's the most considerate orc I've ever seen and is painting hazard stripes on something because he doesn't want somebody to get hurt, which is completely against the main MO of orcs, or he's nicked it off a Space Marine, which is also plausible. But to get around the whole bright yellow versus the burning exhaust fumes coming out, orcs do checker plate quite a lot, like black and white checker plate. Maybe that would be a good alternative to kind of balance out that shoulder because there is an awful lot of very very bright yellow up there. So just devil's advocate for the hazard stripe looks really good. Don't get me wrong, that's how you do hazard stripes. It looks great, but just in this case, with all that, it's detracting away from the effect of the heated engines glowing into the smoke. That's all. And pretty much any other time, I'd say yeah, hands down. I love hazard stripes and how you've done them. So that's awesome. The only other thing I wanted to maybe draw into question was the weathering of the metals. Like it looks really um, harsh line between the not weathered surface and the weathered surface, if that makes sense. You need to try and soften some of these out, and if these are meant to be streaks, like these need to be super thin, or like they start a bit thicker at the top and then they get thinner and they get fainter as they come down. But these are just like it's all the same intensity all the way down, and there's like a very very broad, stark line between the brown and the metal color. You need to soften. You need to feather that out. Uh, it's better on the armor up here. That is better, but still, like for going for competition, you need to really render this a lot smoother than that. And the same, I've just noticed as well, probably for what I believe to be the leather stuff around him. So smoothing it out and making that transition, a little bit easier on the eye because these are quite scratchy and stark in a lot of places, and because there's so much going on with the elements. There's a lot of shapes, there's a lot of textures, materials, colors. You need to try and limit the amount of scratchiness on here, otherwise it just becomes so confusing to the eye you can't really read what it is. Another example there of just softening out this rusted metal. I mean, they're great colors, and like the placement of it is all good. Just try and soften it down. And if you don't have dirty down rust, then for goodness sake, get some because it's the best rust effect paint that money can buy. And I'm not endorsed in any way. I just think it's brilliant and so easy and so quick. But yeah, brilliant. Depending on what competition you're going to, it is capable of placing well. So best of luck with that, Zach. Let us know how you got on, please. And we'll see you next time. And then sliding up to Alex, who's done some Colonial Marines, the Sin Eaters, and just trying to get an overall sense on the models. Painted these up for an ongoing campaign of the Aliens RP. So I think overall they look really good. Like, good separation on them. Great tones of values. The camo really sells. General feel of them, like tabletop wise, killer, like awesome. The only thing that lets them down is the bases. I'd say they're a bit oversimplified. Um, so rusting, chipping, some paint on there, some like stenciled letters. Well, paint. Duh. Sorry, silly thing to say. Like the floor has been painted at some stage, and it's been chipped, worn away, rusted through. You know, just in some way weathered in to the surface. But this kind of just one flat color that I don't think's even been washed. Maybe they're a work in progress. I'm not sure. Uh, but whatever the case may be, like that's if this is them finished, then they're letting the models down. Put it that way, because I think, and the way you've done like the blue visors and lenses and stuff is really really strong. Like I didn't have a lot of like constructive feedback, to be honest. Like for what they are at this scale, and the purpose of them for gaming, really 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 strong. Like it's just done a great job on them. Like the models themselves, there's a little bit of um, separation that's a bit weak in some places, but like where this jacket is meeting this arm, it's a little bit weak there. But on the contrary, like most of the time, the separation is really good. So it's just a few elements where it could be a little bit better. Islanding on the skin on this darker flesh tone that you've got a little bit. Just make sure you're highlighting the skin like all the way up to the top of the shape of the muscle, just to get rid of that islanding effect where you've kind of got a shadow before the crease, at the crease, and after the crease. Like we don't want that. It wants to be brightest on the top, shade right down to the bottom, but then the muscle underneath it, the brightest highlight needs to touch the darkest section of the one above it. Just repeat that everywhere, and you'll get rid of that islanding thing. But yeah, other than that, skin looked really, really strong. Hair looks really, really good. So, and I like the way the commander's in a different camo as well. He's in more of like a urban camo. Really good. So, yeah, I think they look great, Alex. Really, really nice. Matt?
Yeah, totally agree. They're super good. I really love the camo. I think it's like it's hitting that line between it looks realistic, but it also you can see what's happening because obviously the whole purpose of camo is to break up the outline of things. So if you do too realistic camo, your figure looks like nothing from a distance. But I think from a distance they still look like guys in fatigues. And then when you zoom in, you're like, oh, you got all that cool different like modeling and different stripes and stuff, and it looks like it could be a real actual pattern of camo. Blue visors, as Jim said, look great. The only thing I'd say could do with a little bit of improvement is the kind of black gray areas, like the smart gun, some of their like pouches and belts. Like it looks like you've gone with a black that isn't that black. It could be photos, but it doesn't look like super black. It's like very dark gray and then medium gray, and in some places it just looks a bit like dull and kind of hard to read. If that makes sense. So if you had like a darker black, sometimes sometimes colors look blacker. Like if you use like a deep violet, it'll look darker than black for some reason. And then you can have like you could also do like another light gray, and again you could make it like a warm light gray, like an ivory, or maybe not even that bright, just to like kind of show these are shiny metal things. I think like the boots are kind of getting away with it, but you got like some people have like belts going across here, and then a gun that's like this, and it's like kind of they're like blurring into each other. So if you had like some darker lines and some brighter lines, just separate that out. I think that'd be great. But that's like a very minor piece of these figures, and I think they look really, really, really good, especially for the table. Stuarte, we still never figured out how to say your name, but we're gonna stick with that. Mr. Lima, trying to increase the interest and how to fix the gold MM, please, on this Usharan guy for the old world, I think. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really good in terms of interest. Like you've already got a lot of color going on, so he's already very interesting. You got like blue and yellow, which are complementary colors, and then his skin is green and his cloak is red. So that's like all of them. You got like two pairs of complementary colors, so that's like creating a lot of interest already. Um, you might want to be a little bit careful about like yeah. So when you do four like really contrasting colors, you have to be a bit careful about like the saturation levels of them. I think you're kind of hitting like the blue is the most saturated here, then probably the yellow or the red, and then the green. And I think you're kind of working it quite well. And just be careful about it because you can end up with something that looks a little bit over the top when you've got so many different bright and contrasting colors. on it. And another thing is that if everything is kind of interesting, then nothing is particularly interesting. So, like, if you wanted us to look at his face, for example, you'd probably make the cloak like darker and more desaturated. You make his feet darker and more desaturated. You make all that fur on the top like fade out, kind of like so you're creating this focus like in towards an area. And then you can also do stuff with lines where like you have line like if you had a highlight on the shoulder that led up there. But the figure is like very complicated. It's not the worst of GW's overcomplicated figures. I think the old world is a little bit more like it's a little bit more self control, like, but it's still like he's got a scepter and a crane and all sorts of stuff going on. So yeah, I think he's got plenty of interest. I don't think you need to worry about that too much. I think the NMM looks the best. So I don't know what you mean by fix it. Like some parts of it look really, really good. Like especially the rod, like his scepter that he's holding, and his kind of like rings and bejangles. The gem in the middle of his head also looks like amazing. It's like a third eye kind of thing going on. I really, really like that. And then he has like a ruby ring, which kind of like calls up to it as well. Um, I think the shoulder is probably one of the areas he's struggling the most with. It's like a globe, but it's also got a lot of stuff that's breaking it up. I think the way you've highlighted the kind of underneath part works, but then it's got these extra plates on top, which should be highlighted towards the center. Or you could do just change that and be like, oh, his shoulder it's gold, and then the top part is like enameled red or whatever, and you could have the paint flecking off, and that'd make it a lot easier. But generally, like you have to treat the whole thing. It's basically a section of a sphere, so the highlights should go in towards the middle, and then secondary at the like 180-degree mark. Um, the flanges on his mace, I don't even know how you'd really deal with that. Like, you you can't get a flanged mace with a skull in it. Like that doesn't make any sense. So you're trying to like impose realism on something like there would be reflections of the skull on the inside of the flanges. But probably your best bet is go really dark on like the inside parts, like getting towards the skull, and like go out to black basically, and then really bring out the sharp edges. I think that will probably be your best bet on those. But like it's also very tricky because again they're flat planes, and you'd get that thing where like one of them's pointed towards the camera and one of them's like that, and they'd end up like highlighted completely differently to each other. But I just say do the normal kind of like simplification where you like shade the recessed areas and highlight the top areas a little bit more. And then probably his other shoulder, yeah, again, that looks more like the light would be towards the front, the shoulder that's nearest his scepter. But it's kind of like tucked away in there, so I think you don't need to worry about it nearly as much. Like people are going to be looking at the scepter when they're looking there, rather than focusing on that shoulder pad. And then the last thing I said was the base is cool, except for like the mud on the edges is just some sort of texture paste that is all cracked and it hasn't been painted and kind of lets the piece down overall. So I would add more color, add more debris and texture and stuff in there just to fill out the base so that like he fills up the whole space of it, rather than looking like at the moment like you put him on with his kind of base that he comes with and they just kind of texture pasted around the edges to make it not be just like black base. But yeah, overall really good. I think like especially like kind of face area and the gems are very very strong. So hopefully that helps. Jim.
Yeah, not too much more to add, to be honest. Again, plenty of interest in it. I think an area for an improvement could be when you paint the folds of your cloak. Like we say it quite a lot. It's a common issue that people run into. Is like where the cape is folding down into like a groove. Like that's not always a shadow. It's not because the fold of the cloak at the top isn't always the brightest bit, because the light is coming down here, and this section of the cape here is literally receiving all 100% of the light that's coming down. So all of this should be bright, and you've painted it all as a shadow because it's going down into a crevasse. This bit here, for argument's sake, that is heading down, and that does need to be in the shadow because the top section is here and then it's folded away from the light. So this one does need to be dark, but then as it comes out here again, this is flat and facing up. So just be a little bit more deliberate with where the light is actually going to interact with the material, and don't just go, okay, if it's folded in, it's dark. If it's folded out, then it's bright, because it sells an awful lot better if you treat it, as each fold of the cape, each section of it has got to be treated as its own element and not just dips and troughs. Okay, so then the only other thing that I don't think Matt's mentioned is the base rim. Oh heavens above! The base rim is not completely black, and maybe the base is a whip, man. Maybe let's treat it as a whip. But yeah, just fill in the last of these bits that aren't quite there yet. Bit of color in the mud, and then black that rim out, and then she'll be grand. But yeah, really nice, moody. I don't even know what this thing is. Looks cool though. Oh, one other thing I forgot to say is possibly for more interest, maybe consider glowing eyes, because at the moment they're just kind of like bony dots in dark sockets, and I thought that would be a good opportunity to bring some really really bright um, color saturation to the face itself. Because other than the red and the tongue, there's not much like bringing attention to the face when you think of all the gold that's around and the bright saturated blue and all of the myriad little elements, bits and bobs and shapes that this thing has got. Just to bring a little bit more interest to the face, you could consider glowing eyes. Yes, that was the thing. Duarte, thanks very much for submitting. And then on to Daniel with a super cool death roller for the Blood Bowl, which just looks pretty damn awesome. And I'm probably just going to gush over this for 2 minutes if you don't mind, because it looks stunning. Like all of the blue and the purple that you've got going on is balanced really so nicely. This is well on theme with their general schemes as well, and how you've integrated this pink into it as well. That just looks so natural the way that that's happened, because there's little bits of magenta like dotted around everywhere else. Really beautifully balanced. Nitpick on the hazard stripes, because everything else is such a high standard and these hazard stripes are wavy. So straightening the hazard stripes out would be very nice. Then when we go over to the back, like you get this like really nice NMM copper thing with I think what's supposed to be like there's either some sort of light coming out of there or it's some sort of like nuclear interaction, some sort that's happening with the pipes. Looks really really cool. Whichever way around it is, that's awesome. The weird thing about this sculpt, I've always thought, is it's very, very sparrow legs, don't they? Sparrow thin legs, very spaghetti-like limbs, which is a bit weird. But anyway, that's nothing to do with you. Again, with the hazard stripes, maybe this time at the back, a little bit of chipping, denting, weathering, because those feet are constantly in contact with hard things, and I just feel that there would be a little bit of maybe he's fresh out of the workshop or whatever. The rest of him certainly looks that way. But it always just kind of helps settle things down a little bit with hazard stripes. The black border is a little bit thicker in some places than others, and again a little bit more wavy. So it's the only nitpick really I've got is just with the hazard stripes. But the way that you've done the yellow, like shaded it, highlighted it, really really tricky color to work with yellow, and I think you've nailed that. So that's really really strong, Daniel. So yeah, and the little details as well on the base, like the coloured leaves and the nuclear ooze coming out of the pipe and stuff, all really strong as well. This side, not quite so blown away with. That's kind of just painted cork, and it is what it is. So if there's anything you can do to, I know it's just the base and it shouldn't really matter that much, but it is a massive chunk of cork, and there's not much happening with it. So it's either slice all that off because it's not doing anything, it's not adding any sort of value to it, or do something with it so it is bringing something, whether it's just skulls or ammunition crate or something or the other. That would be the only other criticism, really, Daniel. Really, really gorgeous overall. Absolutely love it. Great colours, great contrast, light placement. Like the amount of work you've put into like the light placement, secondary, tertiary reflections, just yeah, amazing. So nice work. Applause, Matt.
Yeah, super cool. It's like the whole thing is made out of gems, which is like very difficult to pull off. I really like how you managed to get that NMM copper like worked into like the roller as well in like and on surfaces that are really like complicated and stuff, and it looks like pretty much perfect. Like I think you've really like got that down. So great work altogether. The only thing that I would say is kind of stands out a little bit to me is that it's got these like handlebars, and he's got like the brakes, like it's a bicycle or whatever it is, and they're very the same exact same color as like the area in front of him, and you've kind of like got this thing going where every panel is like it goes like blue, purple, blue, pink, whatever. So you've got everything's very nicely separated out by the colors you've done, except for that. So he's got like kind of like blue bracers skin, then blue knuckle guards, and then blue again. So like if you did them in copper or in purple or whatever, just something to separate them out a little bit, because that's like the only area of the figure that isn't like reading 100% to me, which is very impressive considering with the amount that's going on. The fact that everything else reads is not easy to do. So like, yeah, like 9.9 out of 10, I'd say probably. You can think about whether you want to change that or not. And again, we're looking at like photo of it, so we don't really get the three dimensionality. So maybe it looks like much more readable in your hand than it does to us in the photo. Absolutely stunning work. Thanks very much for submitting. Kind of reminds me of Torchlight, which is a very old game that I was playing recently, but I guess it's more just that kind of general wow dwarf aesthetic. It's very nice. Okay,
Ooh.
Christopher Arroyo doing. I only saw this today, but I didn't write notes on it, so there you go. First time investing significant time in a base. It's done for. I'm going to see about entering a competition. Okay, so you want this isn't for a competition, but you want to see if you can, and then you painted it for someone else, so they picked out the colors. Okay, cool. It's great. I think the colors are very strong. I really like the fade you have going on the wings. And I think the cloak, it's a very contrasting color and it looks really good. And I like how there's like kind of subtle. I don't even know if you call it texture. I suppose it is texture in the cloak, where it looks at first glance like it's very solid color, and then when you look closer, you're like, oh, and it has like nice little like shading and highlights kind of worked into it. So it's still a very, very vibrant red, but it's not like completely flat, which I think is great. Um, Face also looks good. Obviously, very important part of the piece. I think it's very nicely done. My biggest issue with it is the base, because it's very distracting to the piece. And I'm not 100% sure exactly what's going on in it. It's like there's a dam breaking, and like this, like she's on a ship, and the ship hit a dam, and then there's water running in. But the problem isn't anything to do with like the sculpting. It's that you've painted the base kind of like it's a figure, if that makes sense. Um, Whereas it's only there to support the figure. Like there's this incredibly saturated blue and yellow that you've got going on is like really eye catching, and it's only just part of the background. So I think you could make that blue like much more desaturated, much darker, and like especially towards the edges. And also would look more like water that way, because water is not like ultramarine blue. I mean, it is when you're looking at the ocean, but like these like waves that are like splashing over the prow of the ship would just be transparent when it's that thin. And then the rocks like being really shiny and like yellow, like very saturated yellow, is again very distracting. And because it's blue and yellow, it makes it like that's a whole scene there, that blue and yellow bit, and the figure is like up above it. So I think you could definitely tone down the color on the rocks and the water, and the piece would look much better overall. If you have an airbrush, you could just like airbrush black ink like around it in a circle and just like deal with it that way. Um, but like I think the sculpting and like the way you've done the base and all looks really good. And maybe you wanted it to like stand out loads, but it's backdrop to the figure, so you don't want it to stand out that much. If that makes sense. Jim.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the base as well. I don't usually like starting on criticism without saying, calling out a lot of the strengths, which there are many. But yeah, it is. The other thing that Matt hasn't mentioned on is like it's so high energy under, like directly underneath her, where the ship is. There's an impact, the water's crashing everywhere, and then down here it's just like this timid little trickle that goes down to some peaceful little rocks in like a little algae pool, and it's just the polar opposite of what's going on above it, which is a bit like and then like the roots of the like, how is there this much depth of water, but these are roots of trees, like this is a mossy bank or something. I mean, it's been put together with great skill, but like it's not really reading. It's not like selling a story, which is what the base is all sort of supposed to do. It's just a bit confusing. So I mean, I think one way around it, like as Matt said, like it's so blue, like it's very, very strong ultramarine blue. And I get that that water is deeper, and therefore it would look, a deeper, more saturated blue than the trickly water. But I think in this case, if you could replicate these sort of colors up here, that would help an awful lot. You could make them like slightly darker, and then, as Matt said, just like nuke the saturation of these rocks. And I think we're in a much more comfortable place, because if we're not looking at the base, like what's going up here is like really quite stunning. Like I love the smoothness and the variation you've got in like the red. It's not quite red though, is it? It's like between red and magenta, isn't it? It's gorgeous color, really, really nice. The metals are really, really strong, like the silver metals. The wood effect that you've got on the haft of the spear is awesome. You could maybe push the highlights on the thigh of the skin a little bit to bring it slightly more, not as high as value of the face, but a little bit more variation than what we've got on that thigh. Because I think the rest of the skin is noticeably better than that thigh, which is visible to the light and to us. Gorgeous auburn sort of shades in the hair, really, really strong. Individual details picked out in the wings, like all gorgeous, gorgeous stuff. I think the only thing that could really use a punch on the figure herself is the gold. Like we need some really, I'm assuming it's gold. I think it's supposed to be gold. We need some really aggressive highlights here on the hips, and then it needs to fall into shadow around the ruby, sapphire. I always get that wrong. The red gem, and then you could start playing around with like secondary reflections where you've got your deep shadows. But either way, you need bright highlights here on the hips, and you need shadows down here by the gem. Another trick for a gem as well is just get a really bright highlight down at the bottom. Not quite as bright as the pure white, but something right down at the very, very bottom is always a good trick as well. Then the same for the headdress. Like you've got more of a highlight there and more of a shadow, but we just need to push that value contrast even further than that. But yeah, super, super strong up here. I'm just really sorry that the base just really isn't working for it on this occasion, I'm afraid, man. But yeah, that's not to say that whoever receives this won't be very, very happy with it. It's just, you said about competition, and when someone says competition to us, then yeah, get both barrels. And it's meant with, all the best intentions in the world. It's not to, put you down or berate you in any way. It's just how it reads. Judges will just see this, think this, and you'll never get any feedback on it. So hopefully this, this is taken the way it's intended, Christopher. All right, but thank you very much for submitting, and I think that's us, isn't it, for this month?
Yeah, said with love, Jim. Good job.
With love.
Cool. Thanks again for everyone submitting. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you want to submit next month, we'll have the event open like the next day or two on Facebook. Hopefully, we'll get enough submissions, or we'll get a few more submissions for November and then December, and then we're actually going to be stopping doing videos after December. We're going to have a special episode in January. So if you have any ideas for our special episode in January, we're going to do a retrospective on like a lot of different pieces and pieces throughout the year. Let us know, and if you want to get your minis reviewed, make sure you get them in next month or in December. And we look forward to seeing you then.